Hey, what's up guys? So as the title of the video states, we're going to be doing a suspension refresh on my 91 MR2, and as you can see here, I've already got the passenger side of the car done, and I'm going to be recording the driver's side today. So the first thing I'm going to do is jack up the driver's side of the car and support it with jack stands. Alright, now the driver's side of the car is up, so now it's time to get these wheels off. Alright, the wheels are off, so now we can actually get started on replacing all these parts. There we go. And this lower ball joint is cracked, so it definitely needs to be replaced. And the back one isn't in much better shape than that. Oh, now everything's in focus down here. So as you can see, this boot no longer seals. This little ring right here, it actually ripped. So who knows how much dirt is inside that joint right here. And this outer tie rod also needs to be replaced. It looks pretty old. It looks like it's been leaking. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut this boot off, and then I'm going to get this inner and outer tie rod out, and then we'll get started on the ball joint. So to get this outer tie rod out, all I'm going to do is use a pair of needle noses, and I'm going to get this little clip right here, this little cotter pin. Just going to use the pliers to get it out. So I've got the cotter pin out, and now I like to use an impact on this. There's less chance of it rotating. I mean, it's not supposed to, but sometimes they can. And the size happens to be a 17 for the OEM. So I'm just going to go ahead and impact this off. So now you can either take a hammer and hit right here with the nut still on it, so you don't damage the threads. I mean, I'm not going to reuse it, but still, that's just what I do. Or you can hit it right here if you'd like, but I'm going to actually hit it right here, and then hopefully it should just pop out. Just a couple hits. Yep, there it goes. So now I'll just have to take that nut out and it'll fall right out. Oh. This thing has a sway bar attached to it. That's kind of a downside of jacking the car up like this, but gives us easier access to this ball joint too. So now I just gotta use a 3/8 and or not 3/8. So now I just gotta use a 3/4 and a 7/8 wrench and get this off right here, and I'll unscrew this whole tie rod, and then I'll be able to slide that boot. Alright, so I've got it broken loose, and it turns out that the OEM ones are actually 3/4 here and here. So, but the new Moog ones, they are definitely 7/8 and 3/4. Or at least they were on the other side. But you can see this is really easy to move, so it's not very ideal for your car. And the inner tie rod actually has some play in it. You can't hear it, but I can feel it whenever I wiggle it in and out. So that's definitely the dead spot I was feeling in the center, because the center definitely had a tiny bit of play in it. So this is the side that was causing that. The other side actually wasn't too bad, but it was definitely worn out, and this thing just flops around. I mean, it should not do that. It should not be this easy to move around. Alright, so I've got this boot off, and all it was is the inside of it, or well, I guess that's technically the outside of the boot. Just had this little clip on it. You just get it off with some pliers. And the inside of it, the big part, it was just a reusable clamp. There's a Phillips. It was really easy to slide off after I, unscrewed it. But to get this off, you can actually rent one of these tools from the parts store. But they said this was for cars, and every single one of these adapters are too big. So I'm gonna have to make a crescent wrench work, and Probably gonna have to see if I can get a piece of pipe on here or something, because that thing's on there really tight. So I'll update you when I get it off. Well, that was actually easier than I thought it was going to be. I got the crescent wrench on there, and I just hit it a bunch of times with my hand, and it actually came off. And as you can see, it's really rusty inside of there. That's what happens when your boots crack and you don't change them. So this is a new tie rod from Moog, and this is all that it comes with. And you got to put this washer right here, actually on the end of here, and then this nut obviously just goes right here, but that'll have to wait until after I get the boot on. And this grease, you just put it right into here, and you're not going to use all of this probably, but you know, just get this coated right here, and then once the boot's on, it'll keep it from getting dirty. Alright, so I've got the tie rod, the inner tie rod, all tightened down, and that little washer that was inside of there, I just bent it over the tie rod, and then I got this boot on finally. So if you're going to do this inside portion, this inside portion was actually really hard to get slipped over the steering rack. What I finally ended up doing was using a dental pick to kind of like, I got as much on the back side as I could with my hand, and then I used a dental pick to run around this front side here to actually slip it over. It was actually way harder than I was expecting it to be, because the other side just slipped right on and it was no problem, but this side wanted to be way more difficult. So if you're doing it, that's just a little tip for you. And for this clamp, it doesn't really matter if you put it on before or after the boot, because you can actually just take this whole thing apart and slide it around and like clamp it around the boot. So it's not a big deal either way. And I actually had to widen this, or not widen, but narrow it, because this was actually a little bit smaller than it was before. So not a big deal, just took some pliers and pulled these apart to make them smaller. That's it for under the car. The only thing I have to do now is put that plastic tray back on that was on there. It's just a bunch of 10 mil bolts, so it's not a big deal for that. So now I can just put this back on. So as you can see, this inner tie rod is way better. It's actually holding itself up. You know, it's harder to move than the other one. It was just flopping around. So that's all taken care of. Next is this lower ball joint here. As you can see, I've already got the cotter pin and the nut off of it. It's just like that tie rod was. So once you get that off, it's a 14. You have to actually use this to pry it out, because there's actually weight on the ball joint holding it in, and the suspension, or this little arm, is actually like pushing up on it too. So if you have to use this little pusher, just slide it over right here, and then you just use a wrench and it'll pop. So then you'll just unbolt those from the top there, and then you'll be able to put the new one in, no problem. The size for those are 17s, so I'm going to go ahead and get that swapped out real quick. Actually, just kidding. This is actually a 17, and these are 14s. So I'll get those swapped out real quick. Alright, so the new ball joint is in. It's all tightened, and the cotter pin's in. Those are tightened. So all I got left to do, well, actually the hardest part is just getting this hole lined back up. You have to pry down on this while this whole assembly is just flopping around. So it's kind of hard to line up, but it's not too bad. So all I got left is to tighten this part. and then put the plastic back on, and this is all done. Alright, the front is all put back together, the under tray's on, everything's all tightened up. So I guess it's time to start on the rear, which is a little bit simpler, but harder at the same time, because if you look here, it's the exact same design as the front. The ball joint, it has weight on it, but this bar right here, this control arm, actually has a lot more pressure than the front does. So instead of bolting the new ball joint up to this first, I'm actually going to try to put the ball joint inside of here, and then try to get it lined up and see if that helps. Because on the other side, I tried bolting it up here first, but it was really hard to get this back lined up. So I'm going to try that method and see how it works. So I ran into a little bit of a surprise taking this ball joint out. You can see the threads on this one are actually pretty shot, but luckily I ran this bolt through the one that this came out of, and it seems the threads on the inside are decent, so that's lucky on that. But I'm gonna have to go get a different bolt at the hardware store, but luckily it's only a block down the road, so I can also, and that just so happens the parts store is also on the way, so I can go return this and that other tie rod tool that I don't need. So I'll go and do that real quick, and I'll be right back. Alright, so I got the new ball joint in, and I'm gonna have to reuse these bolts because the hardware store didn't have anything that I could use, so I'm gonna have to order them online, and I'm just gonna replace both of them when I get them. But for now, it'll hold the ball joint in. And the only thing about these Moog ball joints is I'm gonna actually have to cut this little bit of thread off with a grinder, because it'll actually hit on the wheel. So you're probably gonna have to get some OEM ones from Prime Driven. And my method of getting the ball joint in, of sticking these threads in first, actually did work out pretty well. All I did was I put a jack right here, and I jacked the suspension up, so it made it a lot easier to get it in. There's just so much more room, because the rear is just way tighter than the front is, so the jack really helped out. Alright, I've got those threads cut off, and it should fix itself if you ever take the ball joint back off. But I mean, so that's pretty much how you replace your ball joints and tie rod ends. It's the same exact thing on the other side. So now I'm just gonna put the car back together, get the wheels back on it. Well, that's pretty much it for all the ball joints and the tie rods. So now I'm just gonna get these tires back on. Alright, tires are back on, car's all buttoned up. Now it's time to take it for a test drive and see how my alignment is. It's probably pretty off, but I'll just get an alignment tomorrow because no place is open on Sunday. But thanks for watching.